Welcome today to our recorded webinar on the microbiome test. So today we're going to be looking at all the interesting bits and pieces of information that we can find out from the microbiome test, as well as why we should be ordering the test in the first place. So I'm joined here today with Catarina, who is the manager of the Academy at Omnos and also our resident microbiome specialist. Now, she's going to take us through today, as I said, reasons why we want to order the test, the interesting things we can find out from ordering the test, and also some basic recommendations that we might see come out of the test results themselves as well. So, Catarina, I'll hand it over to you. Walk us through the microbiome test.
Okay, thank you so much, Christian. And let's hope that I can share this time. Here it goes. So welcome to Omnos Academy. We're representing this webinar about the microbiome. And as Christian said, we wanted to share some light, shed some light in the microbiome test, because microbiome has been blooming for the past 10 years and there's a lot of information. So we wanted to give you a sense of what you are discovering if you get a microbiome test, and you'll probably be a bit surprised. So we're here to help you make informed choice through education. And this is the title of our webinar. So understanding your microbiome test, why and when to take it. So we will see through the webinar that when you take a microbiome test, you usually think about testing your normal gut flora, just those families, and we can see the imbalance going upwards, downwards, but it's actually so much more than that. We will test for any kind of pathogen. We will also have a snapshot of your digestive health. For instance, how a pancreas is working, your digestion, your absorption, your inflammation. So is this all bunch of information and data points, then in the end, we can gather together, connect the dots, also with the help of the dashboard, and then have an overview of your health and how you can use your microbiome test to the right conditions and to self-improve yourself. So we will cover during this webinar what we know about the microbiome and how it impacts the whole body. So we tend to think that the microbiome is kind of restricted to a gastrointestinal system, but it is not. And we will learn a bit about that. And what do we measure when you take a microbiome test? What biomarkers exactly? So you know the scope and the reach of this testing that you are doing. When and why you should test your microbiome and digestive health, what are the warning signs, the conditions that are associated with microbiome imbalances. Then we'll slightly pass by the most common imbalances that we come across, dysbiosis and intestinal hyperpermeability, aka the leaky gut, the famous leaky gut. We will go then into the dashboard. That will be fun. So we can see all this information in your dashboard, and you can kind of understand how to navigate your results and get your recommendations if you have some. And in the end, we will end up with some strategies that you can use to improve your microbiome and digestive health. So let's continue. If my computer, oh yeah. So microbiome, what do we know? Well, we know a lot, and there's a lot of information at the moment. We hear so much about probiotics, prebiotics, fiber, everything is now seems to be related and connected to the microbiome. And in a way, it's because it's true, but we don't know as much as we think. So in the past 10 years, we discovered that perhaps 90% of the cells in a human body are microbes, and that up to 3% of our body mass is made of microbial interlopers. So I like to think of us not as containing a microbiome, but contained by a microbiome, and as we will see in the next slide. So new species are constantly appearing. So by now there are approximately 10,000 species of microbes. that went under a taxonomic definition. And this is approximately the same number of words in the planet. Microbiome has this big scope, so everything is big about microbiome, the amount of bacteria, the amount of tissue, his size. We know that if we stretch the small intestine, it would cover like a tennis courtyard. So just imagine that. And we kind of evolved with these microbes in our gut, and we developed a symbiotic connection with them. So we depend on them, they depend on us. And so through the time and through genetics and food, we kind of evolved with our microbes that provide pretty much everything that we need to survive. So if we know and don't know who is behind this, who is coordinating all of this, who is guiding this information and this research. So there are two main projects studying the microbiome, and is the National Institute of Health and the Human Microbiome Project. And their main core is to determine a core human microbiome that is common to all healthy individuals. So by now, we know that there is a normal biosis, but there's more to know. So this research keeps going. Also to assess how the change in your microbiome will be connected to diseases. And knowing that, what kind of alteration in your microbiome will be related to what kind of disease. So at the moment, we are discovering that certain patterns in your microbiome then open a kind of pathway that will then grant the right conditions so a condition can bloom. And discover correlations between diseases and microbial dysbiosis. We will see what dysbiosis is in a minute. So there's this tendency now to discover the pathways between your microbiome and many conditions. So just for this, we can start to understand the reach of your microbiome that literally impacts every tissue in your body. And I really like this image because, again, these are all different kinds of microbiomes. Of course, they are not well studied, and it's mostly mouth, vagina, and skin and gut. But as you see, we have a specific microbiome for the armpit, for instance. So we are covered in microbes, and we need this interchange and keep us healthy, so we can be our optimized self. How do we do that? By understanding what is a microbiome, a healthy microbiome, and then how can you get there? So there's no like set in stone definition for now for microbiome. We know that this is the key. Microbiome is the interface between the body and the environment, and these microbes, bacteria, fungi, viruses, archaea that live in our gut affect health in many ways, and we will see that during the webinar. But essentially, what we know and want by now, it's a gut microbiota that it's able to perform its functional course. And this will be related to digestion and absorption, of course, but also anti-inflammatory, anti-inflammation, immune system, short-chain fatty acids production, vitamins, minerals. So all of that is our functional course of your microbiome, and it needs to be doing that to function correctly. A healthy gut microbiota community. So we want diversity. We need diversity in our gut. And that's why we hear so many times have a diet with a variety of foods, so you can get this diversity and feed the right communities. Again, high tax of diversity. So we have communities, we want those communities to be diverse. And then we want to have also a gene richness that will help us to deepen the symbiosis between us and our private ecosystem in the gut. So this image is a bit of a explanation of all of this that we have been talking about. And so we can see that the gut has a core set of gut microbiomes. And we also know what is the prevalence microbiota in the skin, in the vagina, in the mouth. And then we have the functions as well of the microbiome. So these are the microbiomes from 3 different people. And we can see that they produce core enzymes, metabolites, and pathways. So from these core enzymes, metabolites, and pathways, they will impact all body sites through a lot of pathways as well. They will act in your mouth with the regulation of the pH, for instance, vitamin C biosynthesis, and in the vagina, the regulation of pH via lactic acid production, and also obviously the gut that we will see in more detail. So how do you get your microbiome and how does it get in balance? Well, you get your microbiome from your mom during birth, and then it's basically like a report of your life. The people you've been in touch with, your household, the kind of food you ate, the travels you did, the pets you pet, the soil you touch, all of that will somehow impact your microbiome, the water you drink and the air you breathe. And then, of course, how your other organs are working. So you get your colonization in your gut through geography. So the places you are, the things you touch and come across, and also through your host metabolism and diet and genetics. So you may be prone genetically for a kind of microbiome, but obviously, and most of all, your diet will impact the kind of microbiome that you will have. Okay, so I hope that this was clear so far, Christian.
I believe so.
Yeah. If you have any questions, please jump in.
I was going to say, I remember hearing, just on that last comment, I remember hearing a story about some scientists that went to studying microbiome, particularly in African tribes. So they went and lived with an African tribe for 3 months and tested their microbiome, found almost a wholesale change in their microbiome. But then they went back to New York and lived in New York, just the way standard life they were living before, and tested to see if there's any maintenance of that change. And there was almost a complete reversal back to their normal microbiome, basically suggesting that lifestyle and location was the primary impactor of microbiome diversity. I thought that's quite an interesting story relating to what you just sort of said there. And it was sort of very impactful in terms of exactly where you decide to place yourself on the planet and exactly how you decide to live in that place is actually the thing that drives microbiome. It's not a predetermined set of or preordained set of things, as it were. It's something that you have direct control over, and while it may be very highly related to the place you are, it is also very highly related to the way you live in that place.
Yes, your choices. Yes. So that's why we're doing this microbiome webinar. So again, what's measured and what's tested in your microbiome test. So we'll go a bit further into this microbiome testing, and this is the image. So if you go into the Omnos platform and you click into the microbiome test and then into biomarkers tested, this is what you will see. So these are all the biomarkers that you will be tested for. Of course, they are not presented like this in the report. They are then bundled in groups and then on the dashboard again, so you can have a better understanding of what groups, and is it your microbiome, is it SALI, is it that enzyme that is lacking, or so. But this is all, and this is a lot. So how do we take all this information and make it into something that we can work with and understand how a microbiome is working? So here we have the first page of the microbiome report. And as you can see, there's this kind of definition of normal biosis. So this would be what is considered a normal microbiota. So this hexagon should be within this line. So here, it's not very obvious, but here we can see that there's a dysbiosis, which means there's an imbalance in your gut microbiome, but is for lack. So we were talking about richness and diversity, and here we have a lack, and this is very common. As for Proteobacteria, another family of these 5 big families, there's a slightly overgrowth. So as you can see, just from this image, we can already start to sense what is the direction. Are you more pro-inflammatory, in a more pro-inflammatory state? What is the kind of diet? We can start to infer some information from this microbiome evidence and diversity summary. And then I chose Actinobacteria because it's actually a small group, but very important. So we can understand what one family does and how it relates to the others. So Actinobacteria, this is a really cool article for someone that's interested. So Actinobacteria, I chose this one because it's one of the few that we can actually modulate because to this family belongs Bifidobacteria, and everyone has heard about it. So it's one of the families that at the moment it's easier to interfere and modulate because we have the probiotics to do that. As for other families, we don't have it because they're gram-negative. So we see that they have a major impact in the maintenance of the gut barrier and production of short-chain fatty acids. So we know that if this family is going under, there will be a reduction in the production of short-chain fatty acids. And if that happens, we will start a pro-inflammatory process. For instance, right? This is just one of their main functions. In your report, you will see Actinobacteria. It was correct, as you see. But as we also saw on the Firmicutes family, there was this lack. The curve was saying there is not enough of these bacteria. And as you can see here, some errors are pointing for lack. So here is, we need to raise the abundance and see how this lack is then interfering with the byproducts that it was supposed to be producing. Then after this view over your normal gut microbes, you also get tested for viruses. For pathogenic bacteria, there are more than the ones that I show here, but they didn't fit in the screen. Imbalanced bacteria that are cultured, so this could go up to 20, 33, we don't know. Parasites, and all of this are parasites that you also be tested. So we know, for instance, if we find one pathogenic bacteria, that we have an immediate action to take, that is to remove that pathogenic from your body. So there is no point in start taking care of a specific family or trying to improve your intake of fiber if you have some of these pathogenic bacteria or a virus just compromising the whole system. So this is very important, so we can address the root cause and then fix the gut. So that was bacteria and bugs. These are biomarkers. So this is also from the report you will find in your dashboard, the raw data. So you will see that there's a test for elastase that will tell us a bit about your pancreatic function, fat stain and carbohydrates. So we will understand how your digestion and absorption are working. You can also see that there's 3 biomarkers for inflammation that will tell us about the inflammatory state of your intestine, your gut lining, and what's the tendency? Is it IBS? Is it IBD? So you can use then these biomarkers to follow up with your therapeutic process to realize if your inflammation has come down or not. We also test for SIGA that will give us an idea of how your mucosal barrier is functioning in terms of immunity. The famous short chain fatty acids, as you can see, this person has an almost perfect score. And then pH, yeast, that is also pathogenic, red blood cells, white blood cells, muscle fibers. So this is your digestion and the byproducts of your gut metabolites working. And then we have all this information. So coming back a little bit to the beginning, we can now understand that when you're testing your microbiome with this test, you're testing for your normal gut microbiota and their percentage, their relations, their correlations. You are testing for pathogenics, you are testing for inflammation, digestive health, absorption, all of that. So how do we then combine all this information and make sense of it? By understanding which are the principal imbalances found in microbiome. And you probably heard about it, dysbiosis, it's all over, and intestinal hyperpermeability, AKA leaky gut. So I would like to start with this sentence from another cool article that says that considering the close relationship of leaky gut and gut dysbiosis, meaning these two main imbalances that we are about to talk about, to the major diseases. So there's this connection is almost, we can't question it. It's a close relationship. We can conclude that dietetic and probiotic approaches to recover healthy microbiota have the potential to make a breakthrough in the management of these diseases in tomorrow. This goes a bit to what Christian said, right? So we have this idea, we know now that dysbiosis, leaky gut are connected to major diseases, and our lifestyle and choices and place of living will impact and modulate these imbalances. And so you can have a breakthrough into the tomorrow. Knowing this, we can now open the scope and see why you should also have a test when you're suffering from an autoimmune condition, for instance, or if you find yourself in a place where nutritional deficiencies just keep coming or that don't seem to improve. You also have inflammation, and inflammation is not restricted to your gut or your digestive system. It's an inflammation that you can feel in your skin as a skin condition and in your joints as pain. And then obviously the ones that are more directly related to the gastrodigestive system, like abdominal pain, diarrhea, bloody stool, etc., IBD, IBS. But let's just consider the scope just of inflammation, right? Inflammation, there's a sentence that says, is the mother of all diseases. So just imagine inflammation in your gut, and then where can it go? We will see that in a bit. But this is enlarging the way and the choices you have to test for once you think of microbiome. So it's not just testing your poo, it's actually testing your whole system. So now, what happens in the microbiome and in our gut that then can develop into so many degenerative diseases, metabolic disorders, you name it. So the digestive system, it's layered with one coat of cells, and those cells are called enterocytes, and they are very, very tied together So they allow the exchange of nutrients with the blood circulation, but no pathogen shall pass that barrier. So it needs to, we need a breach, an opening, a gap in those tight junctions, as you can see here, to make all this undigested food and particles and LPS to start flowing into your bloodstream. And your immune system will recognize that as an invader, as a pathogen, and start an inflammatory response. So leaky gut or intestinal permeability is this condition where your gut lining cells are no longer able to keep all the things that are supposed to be tight contained in your intestine, and they somehow float into your bloodstream, go wherever they want to go, and create problem where they want to. So as you can see here, intestinal permeability via its effects on tissues outside the gut may also contribute to a chronic state of metabolic hypotoxemia, which drives metabolic and physiological consequences that may have far consequences on immunity, brain, and even aging. We will then see that there's also the opening of the brain blood barrier, leading to some brain inflammation. Now, is it okay, leaky gut?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll go into the other one, dysbiosis. So dysbiosis is an imbalance in your gut flora. But this imbalance doesn't mean always an overgrowth. So you can have an overgrowth, and that is called SIBO, but you can have an undergrowth as well. So there is not enough bifidobacteria in this person, so she will suffer probably from diarrhea. So that is also a dysbiosis. And also the combination of the two. You can have SIBO and lack of good bacteria. And then if you want to have more, you can have pathogenic bacteria overgrowing, and then you have a party in your intestine. And all these bacteria working not in the symbiotic way, working against each other and producing a lot of byproducts, will then start to damage that gut lining that we don't want to breach. We want to have it close and tight so everything can stay inside the intestine, everything that is supposed to be, but the enzymes and the vitamins can then flow into the bloodstream. When you have dysbiosis, and you can see here, it can be a decrease of beneficial microbes, an increase of pathogenic microbes, a reduction in diversity, and then you can mix all of this and you still have a dysbiosis. So this creates a cascade of events, and we will have just the ground laid for some conditions that we will see. Now, LPS. LPS stands for Lipopolysaccharides, and there are toxins that are found in the membrane of gram-negative bacteria. And these are kind of okay if they stay inside your gut again, right? Inside your gut, within the right amount, it's okay. They are a normal part of our ecosystem. The thing is, when you adapt to a certain kind of diet or some condition just triggers the production of LPS, and there's a breach due to leaky gut or due to dysbiosis, and this LPS flows again into the bloodstream and becomes highly inflammatory. And this has implications all over your body. So we can see here that contributes to plaque formation in the arteries, leading to heart disease, and also has been implicated in metabolic, liver, thyroid, bone, and nervous system disorders. LPS can also open the blood-brain barrier and put the brain and nervous system at risk. So there's like this inflammation. So we know that when we have LPS, and another way that is used to test leaky gut is measure the antibodies, LPS antibodies. We know that there's a dysbiosis happening and there's inflammation. So we need to then address the root cause of this. And I really like this image because here in blue, you can see all the good things, and in red, you can see all the bad things. You have the inputs, and then you have the outputs. So these are your actions, and this is what your intestine will respond. So if we have, for instance, some kind of medication or diet or lifestyle that alters our pH, if there's excess of protein consumption, they consider this in here, sugar intake, saturated fatty acid intake, and then the PPIs, antibiotics, NSAIDs, we will see that the short chain fatty acids, that we know that it is so important, we start to decrease. We'll start to have the production of inflammatory substances like the LPS and TMAL. We will also get gut inflammation, cognitive decline, right? Because of that blood-brain barrier that's starting to develop insulin resistance and increased risk of diarrhea. But then again, we can come here and see what's the intake that will have a different outcome. So dietary fiber, probiotics, and this doesn't necessarily come from supplements. Let's think about this as food, as our fuel, as the things that we do every day. And then we can start to see, because they are feeding the right bacteria and promoting an imbalance by consequence, we'll start to see a raising in the short chain fatty acids. So we know that our immune system will work better. There will be enough food so the good bacteria can digest and synthesize vitamins. We can see an improved lipid metabolism. And then again, insulin sensitivity and reduce risk of some infections. So it seems quite simple, but it's also quite amazing.
Yeah, I think that LPS can never be underestimated.
Yes, there's not enough talk, I think, around LPS.
No, completely. I mean, just even when we're going back to the lipid metabolism and insulin sensitivity, LPS such a huge impact on that, and also just from the fact that a lot of the fatty acids, especially the fatty acids we consume when we need to consume, are actually quite fragile. And the LPS specifically oxidizes them, and also oxidizes LDL cholesterol when you get through, which is why it drives plaque formation, for example. So it's actually, your cholesterol levels around like plaque formation are actually a bit of a misnomer a lot of the time. A lot of people focus on them wrongly. It's actually the oxidization of those lipid products and the cholesterol itself through things like LPS. They're actually driving that problem. So it's such an important thing to really consider.
Yes, microbiome. That magic one, that magic test. Oh, and now we are going to see that word. Okay. So this is our famous user. He's called Demo. And here you can see what your dashboard will look like. So let's imagine you had tests. Our demo user had all the tests. So how can you navigate this and then go into your microbiome and understand? So if you click here, you have wellness scores. So we'll go into body because we're interested to see what happens there. And in this bundle, we can see there is a sector where we look at your nutrition status, your detoxification, hormones, digestion, and circulation, and how are they affecting the function of your body. So as you can see here, there's a priority, right? What is most damaged or at risk, and what is less likely to be a cause of problem. And here, pathogenic status comes as the red one. So 0% that you will not have a problem with this. So when there's a pathogenic status, that gets priority because you need to eliminate that from your body. In this case, our demo user has yeast. But then you can click around and see more. And then we can go into test results and have the microbiome results. So this is the translation that Omnos team, and especially Christian, did from all that information that we saw in those lines and charts with all those names. And so here under microbiome, you can see them grouped by results, where you can see a group of biomarkers together to assess a specific function or a specific state. Or you can also look at your biomarkers like this, like elastase, for instance, assessing how your pancreas is working. Lactoferrin, for instance, in this case, that is very high in this patient. So we know that there's an inflammation. You can click here, you have a description of what is lactoferrin, what does it do, why do we measure it, and what is your interpretation according to your results. So you have a high lactoferrin, so we know that it's a useful biomarker for monitoring and controlling diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and other kinds of inflammation, but specifically these ones. So you can get into deep in all these biomarkers and understand and read. Of course, if you score optimal, you will have not recommendations because you're optimal. If your score is unbalanced, not optimal, we will give you recommendations. So let's scroll down a little bit and see why the first priority there on the wellness score was pathogenic status. So it's because of the gut yeast that was abnormal and detected. So again, you can read about it. What does it do? Why do you measure it? And your interpretation. And here, as you see, there was a high amount of yeast markers that were found in your stool, in your sample. And so because yeast can be such a tricky one to get, and there's so many unrelated symptoms when it comes to yeast and fungi, that we advise, given the amount that was found, we advise to consult a microbiome specialist. Nonetheless, you still can avoid sugar that we know that directly feeds yeast. And we also recommend you something to take, in this case, antifungal. What else can you see? Oh, so this is perfect, right? It's like 100% unlikely to have any disturbances in the production of short-chain fatty acids like high. How does it look when it's okay? It looks the same. You can still have you still have the description, what does it do, your interpretation, and you can see the related biomarkers. So we can see here, for instance, acetate, right? That is highly anti-inflammatory. This is really cool. So you can then have an idea of your total short-chain fatty acids. You don't have recommendations here because it's correct. Again, and then we have a dysregulation in that normal biosis. This is the dysregulation in your gut microbiome, your core gut microbiome. And it's one of the families that is more prone to produce LPS. So in this case, it was considered abnormal So it was signaled. And as you can see, increased abundance of Proctobacteria may be associated with inflammation. And so inflammation, and then it goes on, right? Inflammation on bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome. And then if there's leaky gut, that will be, because there will be a lot of production of LPS, then it can spread all over. Things to do: increase soluble fiber, increase polyphenols, increase insoluble fiber. So for instance, if you click here, why am I taking insoluble fiber to lower my LPS? We will explain why. You will see that it will be transformed and digest into a gel-like substance, and then it will be digested by the bacteria in your large intestine, and that will be beneficial for glucose levels, fat absorption, cholesterol levels, so all the lipid metabolism. And then we give you examples of food that contains soluble fiber. The same goes for the other recommendations. And we also tell you things to avoid. So in this specific case, we recommend that we lower the amount of protein. And then you have alternatives, examples, and also trans fats. So you can click around, you can understand what it is and why you are taking it, and where can you find it. And I guess we have an overview and understanding of the dashboard. Christian, would you like to show anything else?
Yeah, I think just click into pathogenic status for us, because we've seen it from the microbiome test view. But if we look there and you scroll down a little bit, we can see that pathogenic status is a result state itself. We can click through that, and then we can see what's linked to it as well. So if we say related results, for example, and we can see gut yeast here is abnormal in that. So when you look through the sort of subsectors of the health scores, for example, we can click through things into seeing where they're coming from as well, just as we do with the individual result states to data points and symptoms and so on as well. So it's a nice intuitive way to allow us to be able to click through things and figure out what's going on within the scoring system. So it's designed to be highly integrative in that manner.
Okay, yes. And I wanted to also show the recommendations, right? Christian, do you want to explain us how this works?
Yeah, so basically, once we've figured out what the highest priority of recommendations are to perform first, we give you a step-by-step process that looks at looks at those recommendations in those priority rankings. So what we've done here is, right, well, pathogenic status is the first thing we have to remove. So that's going to go priority order 1. Now, what we've done is we go, right, well, let's look at all the recommendations being made within that priority 1 sectioning, which, because it's just one thing, it's just a few recommendations here particularly. And we're saying, right, well, see a microbiome versus remove sugar, they're the recommendations. And then we can look at supplements, and we see what supplements are being recommended. And then we can also look at what the food list and see if there's any particular things around food that's being recommended, in this case, just to avoid. But there also could be food to seek. So then we can see, right, that's what I need to do first. I can handle all that. I think I can handle a little bit more. So you look at priority 2 status, for example, and then you start to go, right, well, I can increase this stuff, I can decrease that. Here are some other recommendations that can be made, and we start to look at other things that will be good for you to do. So you yourself can choose how many recommendations you want to implement in your life, and you can see which things are more important first to start with first. Then you can go to the next bit and then start adding them in. As doing wholesale changes can be a little bit difficult, we've put it in this way so we have that rank ordering, so you can decide in your own time how much of this to include in your general living and lifestyle.
So here's an increase
Yeah,
very good, because you have so many recommendations. It's like
yeah.
a grocery shopping list.
Exactly. It's not like you have to eat. It's like, oh, this is a directive. You must eat all of these foods. And it's like, hey, here's some of the foods that you're going to do better if you eat more of. And the other one is, here's some of the foods you'll do better if you avoid more of. And then you just go through and go, right, well, which of these foods do I like? Which of these foods do I eat? Which of these foods don't I eat? And you can go, right, well, actually, I don't mind this food, but I don't eat it ever. So, hey, maybe I'll add this to my shopping list. Oh, I eat this all the time and I shouldn't eat it. So maybe I'll remove that from my shopping list.
Yeah,
I like this. Yeah, I like this and I eat it all the time. That's great. I'm just going to eat more of it. You know, so it just gives you that control and that ownership over your shopping list with a little bit more of a objective directionality.
Yes, that's the point. Thank you, Christian, for stepping in. He was the developer of all of this, so he's the best one to explain us how it works. And now for the final part, microbiome interventions. I hope that you're seeing the image. So these microbiome interventions are not random, but are not also specific or targeted to a specific condition. These are interventions that have been considered effective in any kind of microbiome disruption. So we will see 3 of them, I believe. But first, we can understand how we impact our microbiome with our lifestyle, and the 2 kinds of strategies, of interventions that we can have. So we have the so-called untargeted interventions. So for instance, we know that exercise in the right amount for you, so this is individualized as well, is good for your microbiome, but we also know that athletes, for instance, have a different microbiome, and it works as well as the normal biosis microbiome. So again, some things that we still don't know. Your individualized nutrition, this is very important, and that's why in the dashboard you have groups of foods that are targeting that that microbiome or that lack of micronutrients, or trying to improve your short-chain fatty acids production, etc. There's also the fecal microbiota transplantation starting to become more popular, and then the famous prebiotics, probiotics, symbiotics, and postbiotics. There's a boom of biotics now, and there's more and more and more information coming every day about this. And then there are the target ones. These are very, very, very specific, but we know that they're starting to be bioengineered commensals, so that just imagine having small robots in your gut, just making it all right. And drugs that target selected microbial metabolisms, like for instance, having something that just targets the LPS and the family, the overgrowth of a family that's producing LPS without eliminating it. So this will be very cool, the future. It's amazing. So one of the proven interventions for microbiome, it's omega-3. It's known to have a very positive impact in reverting the microbiota composition and increase the production of of anti-inflammatory compounds like the famous short-chain fatty acids. And by that, we will boost immunity and will help to maintain that integrity of the intestinal walls. So there's no leaky gut, there's no hyperpermeability, and there's no leakage of whatever needs to stay inside the gut. And also that omega-3s have an influence in the gut-brain axis, something that we didn't cover, maybe next time, through the gut microbiota composition. So we know that your microbiome can, in ultimate instance, inflammate your brain. So we know that omega-3 acts in that sense as well. Another one that we saw the recommendation on the dashboard is dietary fiber. Dietary fiber is consumed by commensal bacteria, and then there's the production, again, of short-chain fatty acids, that then, especially butyrate, And butyrate has been implicated in the resolution of a lot of conditions like IBD, and also butyrate has been shown to help strengthen that junctions of the enterocytes of your intestinal wall. So again, dietary fiber as something that you can include in your diet every day, hopefully, and that will work against any leakage or any damage that your intestinal wall might have. And polyphenols. So polyphenols are bioactive compounds, and they are proven to regulate inflammation, to modulate gut microbiome, and also to work, as you can see here, to work on the intestinal permeability, or that then influences all of these conditions. Okay, but what are polyphenols and where do I find them? Are they in a jar? So this is a snapshot from the dashboard. So here you have increased polyphenols. You would have this recommendation if you have that case. And then we would tell you increase polyphenols. You can see a small explanation of what they are. So they are compounds found naturally in plants, and they have been shown that their consumption provides many healthy benefits through the regulation of metabolism, weight, chronic disease, and cell proliferation. And examples, where can you find polyphenols? Of course, you can buy them, but you can also include them in a more constant way in your diet. So with these three interventions, omega-3, increased fiber, and a variety of foods that provide you enough polyphenols, these compounds, anti-inflammatory compounds, you are working towards the regulation of your microbiota and the integrity of your intestinal wall. That is pretty much what you need to then have a working gut that performs their core tasks, and you can then thrive with your health. So from my side, this is everything for today. I don't know if Christian wants to add anything.
I think you've covered off many things very, very well. I mean, like we could talk forever, as we both know, on subjects of these types, but we've always got to start somewhere. I think this is a good place for us to start and finish for today then. But yeah, thank you, Catarina, for all of this. It's amazing stuff, and always super useful for everyone to just get a little bit more insight into the tests and what they are and why they're useful. And I think that's done a good job of that today, or at least I hope everyone else feels that way as well. But yeah, thank you again for taking us through everything.
You're welcome. Thanks, Christian, for hosting this and making those pertinent interventions. We should develop that and thing. And for someone watching, you can also use the Academy address, academy@omnos.me, to leave your questions, topics that you would like to see covered. We are here for providing knowledge, so we would like to have your feedback. So thank you again, and see you next time. This was Omnos Academy. Bye.